Joining us this morning is author of The Israel Warrior, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. Rabbi, good to see you this morning. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so Kerry gives this, appears to be very frustrated in giving this 72-minute wide-ranging speech yesterday. This is a week after the controversial vote happened. Tensions surely are rising this morning.
You know, I'm sorry for this metaphor, but it was almost like a diplomatic belch, a regurgitation on Kerry's part. He had this deep animosity toward Israel that he had stored within because of the diplomatic and political consequences had he voiced them. And now when it's really useless because his entire peace initiative has failed catastrophically, he decides to just launch this blame against Israel. The Middle East goes to hell in a handbasket. You have 3 genocides in Syria. Yazidis are being slaughtered, Christians and Sunnis at the hands of Alawites and Shia. And with all of that happening, with children being cluster bombed and attacked with sarin gas and mustard gas, he's concerned about Jews building apartments in East Jerusalem. And one begins to question his obsession, this fixation. Does he not see what's happened in the Middle East that is just on fire under his watch? What is this obsession with Israel? I think it's very disturbing to the American Jewish community to see this obsession play out.
What's his motivation, Rabbi? Is this a diversion then?
It might be a diversion from his own failure. I mean, the only thing he can claim credit for in his diplomatic tenure is the Iran nuclear agreement, which gave the world's foremost sponsor of terror $150 billion by which to kill people. And it gives Iran a path to a bomb in 9 years. So he has to look at all of this failed effort, and he has to blame some party. He doesn't blame Palestinian terrorism. He doesn't blame the Palestinian refusal to accept a Jewish state existing. He wants there to be a 2-state solution, but that second state is going to be like Yemen, South Sudan. Why should Israel? If it's going to be Canada, that's fine, but it's not going to be. And he wants a second state that's going to be like Gaza, another Hamatistan, which will just be used to launch rockets and terrorist attacks against civilians in Israel who have suffered enough.
So how would you describe the damage that has been done at this point? I mean, there's optimism I am seeing about Trump coming in, and Trump himself says come January 20th, things will change, things will be different. Are you optimistic that he can make great change here?
I'm optimistic that President-elect Trump will be a far greater friend to Israel than President Obama has been. The fact is that President Obama has had 8 years of unremitting hostility towards the Jewish state. He's done good things, so let's be fair. He has increased military and intelligence cooperation, and yet he's demonized Israel little by little with things like the United Nations Security Council resolution. We knew this resolution was coming 18 months. Samantha Power was asked about this before a Senate panel, and she refused to say that she would exercise the United States veto in the Security Council. Do you understand the United Nations was set up as a security apparatus to protect vulnerable countries from this kind of aggression? And now it's being used to condemn those countries. What happened to American values of us protecting democracies, countries that espouse our values of freedom and openness and the right to congregate? The Palestinians have none of that. Mahmoud Abbas is a dictator. He is 7 years beyond the elections that he was supposed to go to. He runs a kleptocracy. He steals his people's money. His 2 sons run monopolies on construction industry, distribution of cigarettes. They're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And here we are condemning Israel while all that corruption goes on, and the American taxpayer is being played for a fool. We're giving billions of dollars to the UN, hardworking American money, for what? For them to condemn the only democracy in the Middle East? Where's the outrage?
What made that refusal to veto, and then also that speech that we had to sit through yesterday, even more appalling, is the political timing of it. You said that you have seen this coming. However, to paraphrase what the columnist Eli Lake said, he said, politically, can you imagine if this had happened before the presidential election, the commercials that you would see, that the Obama administration stood by and watched genocide and 500,000 people slaughtered in Syria, but meantime, they're saying that it is now illegal for the Jewish people to make homes in Jerusalem, which is exactly what that resolution did on Friday.
Or for Jews to pray at the Western Wall.
Right.
The site of the ancient Temple Mount.
At the Western
Yeah, it's
Wall.
astonishing. Let me take your point further. If President Obama and John Kerry actually believed in these principles, then they wouldn't have snuck it in just when, in this moment of cowardice, they do it just before Hanukkah, just before Christmas, when the media goes a little bit dead. They didn't want too much condemnation. They wanted to really hit Israel hard and leave them with this terrible resolution that can bring bring economic sanctions, especially in the EU, that can increase BDS, the boycott, divest, sanction movement on campus. They wanted all this to happen without any backlash. I think they were surprised by the ferocity of the backlash, both from the pro-Israel community, Christian and Jewish, etc., and from Prime Minister Netanyahu. So now Kerry had to give this speech, and he did drone on endlessly. And it didn't make any sense because he didn't apportion blame to the real party. Any fair-minded person looks at the constant rockets coming against Israel, the stabbings, the trucks that are driven into civilians, and they say there's a good side and a bad side here, and probably democracy and the free and open society is the good side.
But can we get to the collusion, though? Because, I mean, there are strong charges coming from Israel, the Prime Minister himself, that the Obama administration was behind the push for this resolution. They say they have ironclad evidence, but they're not going to turn it over until the new administration comes in, the Trump administration. Why not turn that over now? Why not show that to the Israelis? Why not show that to the American people?
That's a good question. I would assume because they feel that the Obama administration would take that information and skew it and try to explain it away, whereas a more fair-minded, open-minded administration will accept it and maybe put it out to the American public. I've heard from different sources of what that information actually is. I don't want to say because I don't know how accurate it is, but there seems to have been meetings of the people who were writing this resolution with American officials who are helping craft language, et cetera. Now, who knows, because we have to actually see. But the point is that we heard this was coming. Listen, my organization, the World Values Network, we took out a full-page ad in the New York Times 3 months ago warning against this and saying to President Obama, you will mar your legacy forever. This was in the air. Samantha Power, the UN ambassador, made her name opposing genocide. She won a Pulitzer Prize in 2002. Look at her legacy now. Through the month of December, while Aleppo fell, while we watched Arab children being bombed to smithereens, they're sitting and helping to craft and push a resolution against the Jews. It rings of all the wrong messages of this blame for the Jewish entity while these Arab kids are dying, for goodness sake.
Beyond that, they brokered a deal with Iran that praised for the death of Israel. There were ballistic missile tests earlier this year that carried the Hebrew message, Israel must be wiped out. And as a nation, we're sending $1.7 billion in pallets of cash to Iran as a ransom that will surely be used to fund terror. At every step.
Let's not forget that Israel's the canary in the coal mine. When you say to fund terror, we're not just talking about Israel, which Iran threatens with annihilation every, a few times a week. Death to America, death to America. We have to remember that Iran's ultimate enemy is Iran sees Israel as a client state of the United States. The great Satan is America. The idea that we are funding terrorism, the idea that that's the great diplomatic achievement of this administration. But now to end the administration with a diplomatic assault on Israel, when there hasn't been one United Nations Security Council resolution against Syria, against Iran, against Russia for supporting all of this, the carnage in Aleppo. Remember, Hezbollah is an Iranian terror proxy army right on Israel's northern border. My son served in the IDF on that border, having to face Hezbollah. We have parents that have to worry about the hundreds of thousands of rockets that are on the Lebanese-Israeli border, and there's no condemnation of that. And Samantha Power, who, by the way, who should pay the most important price here, because Obama's time is done, as is Kerry, but she has a long career ahead of her, and she made her name opposing genocide, and she is now a bystander to genocide. Everything she accused people of previously, she is a bystander to genocide, as is Susan Rice, as is John Kerry, as is Barack Obama.
Rabbi Boteach, good of you to be here this morning.
Thank you.